There used to be a book you could read on either one of these two bookshelves. It was back in Find Me. It was called Consuming Shadow. I don't remember the exact contents word for word, but it was removed even though its contents don't seem to contradict the lore as we know in Sincere Deceit, but I guess it was either rendered redundant, or it actually did have something to do with the old world building before it was changed. I'll see if I can get this flipped back correctly so I can read it. So here is Eden Bloom, flipped correctly so you can read it. The binary here, if I remember correctly, it just translates to null twice. The text for these cards, and also what are going to be the suit cards, is extremely fragmented, and I don't remember what all the text says by heart, and and because of its being extremely fragmented, it's kind of hard to read. I can look through my blog to find the post where I transcribed the text here so I can read that. Okay, the suit cards come first chronologically, as far as I've discerned based on the story that all of these cards state. In the beginning there was nothingness. Then the first god came in the form of a child, and he created a room. At first the world was small, and the godchild desired to fill the void around him. He would begin by creating a guardian whom he could rely on to help him in this difficult task. Radha Aloha, the oldest of all, would become the Queen Mother. From her something, because I couldn't figure out what that word is, would be birthed the outer zones. She would rule over all with a firm but loving hand, and all would be good for the first of mankind. Dedan, first to arrive, was given the zone furthest from the room. Tasked with producing the elements of the world, he rallied the people of this realm and gave them purpose. Japhet, the second to arrive, was given the zone the second furthest from the room. He was given the duty of keeping the people of his world happy and content. Giving them all joy and peace, he watched from the tower of his grand library with pride. Enoch, the third to arrive, was given the zone closest to the room. Here he would direct the people of the world to take the elements harvested and something. I think the word might be craft, but I can't really parse it. The final zone, a small and barren on the I think it might be barren, but I can't tell. Barren on the outskirts of the nothingness, became the home of an old cat and his brother, and by his own word he granted himself guardianship. Our father allowed this to be, for he was benevolent and generous. With all the zones now done, the first god could rest. The mother queen looked over at and smiled, for she was pleased with her work. That doesn't seem to make sense. For a time all was good and mankind was content with their lives, but then came a day when the first signs of corruption would rear its ugly head. Mankind could feel its pull, instilling fear and paranoia into the corruption seeped into the guardians, and they became cruel, antagonistic, and neglectful. They allowed the sins of man to destroy them from the inside out, and soon their zones fell to the hands of evil. And yet this horrendous force was not yet done. It soon arrived at the foot of the throne, and the once beloved Queen Mother was soon struck down. Thrown into the thralls of madness, she collected the spirits and drove them to attack the zones head-on, for she perceived it as the proper way to atone for their sins. She left our father alone to The second born from the godchild was a man bathed in the halo of the sun. His heavenly form brought peace to the first god, and he would go on to be a guardian angel to the child. In the depths of madness, he was protected for a time, but even that was soon dashed to pieces. The corruption came to him next. Feeling his strength waning, the first god decided it was time for all things to come to an end, and for it to be remade into something new. The third born was soon formed, and he would become known as the Batter. This pure man was set out into the world, and one by one However, the first god grew fearful for his now inevitable mortality. He no longer wished to die and pleaded with the angel to save him from the purifier, but the angel knew better. He knew that this needed to happen, for the source of the corruption had become dear to him. He stood, I believe the word might be aside, the batter unswayed by his presence, and allowed our Father to be consumed by the white light of the city. With the deed done, there was only one thing left to do. God's servant, maybe? The last question mark, I don't know what that is, of the current world needed to be question mark, so that all could be erased and remade. Before it could complete its villainous task, the angel forced the something, thereby erasing everything except for himself. For a time he dwelled in the nothingness, forming an image of how he wanted the world to look. He would be the new God, and he would make sure all would be perfect. When the time finally arrived for the rebirth, God stepped forth and remade the zones himself. The old rulers were brought back and given purpose once more. They would not fall to the hands of corruption again, for they had his word to live by. Mankind was scooped up from the nothingness and given form. With all remade, God turned his gaze to the room. It was the only realm to not be reawakened by his power. He struggled to bring it back from the brink of death, but it was in vain. This is when the treacherous serpent would come forth to claim its throne. The serpent, given new flesh, created false leaders to rule alongside it. Together they turned the room into something new and wrong. It became the new seat of corruption, something that God protested much against, but his words fell on deaf ears, so he left them their devices, for he knew one day their sins would come back to haunt them. And that's what I was able to transcribe from those fragments. It's especially notable that the Joker card that specifically details Hugo's death is the one that's actually the most fragmented and like very difficult to decipher what all those fragments are, which is curious because if you know Zaphiel's memories, you know the story, especially in the Joker card, is the exact inverse of what actually happened. So for that one to be the most difficult card to read, that says a lot about how he registered what happened. Omega is pretty worthless until it gets promptitude ratio. Okay. I don't remember if I fixed this or not. Let's see. Okay, I think I did. Yes, I think I did. Before, like, only this area, this lighter colored area, would take you up to into the residential area. But you could these darker colored areas, you could they did not have a transfer to the residential area, so you could just walk up and then walk behind the transfer tiles to the residential area, and then you could just clip up into the this overhang over here, and you could see like the batter like kind of like clipping halfway in, halfway out, because of the upper layer tiles and lower layer tiles thing that RPG Maker does. So I just made it to where you do transport up even with the darker areas, because like I get why it's like that. It's because these darker areas have a block here before you do Japhet. And if you try to no-clip past it and then you go back down, you'll end up inside the block and probably end up no, not probably, you will end up soft locked. But the thing is that soft lock only happens if you're no clipping, which means you could just get back out. There's no point. So I just do this. This is 1420180. Oh no, I didn't fix this. The residential area in Zone 2 is a nightmare and a half when it comes to its collision. There's some tiles that are just like invisible walls, and there are some tiles, and there are some tiles where you could just like walk into the wall. I had to it took me 2 hours just to fix the blue zone variant. Well, not 2 hours for the blue zone variant. It took 2 hours combined for the blue zone and the normal variant. But it turns out I did not fix the original, the Impure Zone 2 variant as thoroughly as the blue zone version. I mean, look on the bright side, they could be spectre mites. That's what I was afraid of. The only residential area I did not mess with was the red zone variant, because with how broken the red zones are in general, I don't know what is and is not intentional with the clipping, so I just left it alone. Because there is so much clipping there, it's not funny. Oh, and this doesn't say anything. Well, at least it saves me from having to grind near the top of the library. Because I ended up getting really lucky with the RNG, the enemy encounters in the apartments in the residential district, and I'm slightly underleveled. That's also something I might end up doing by accident, especially because I'm so used to Alpha going first. That and also during really long battles, I'm so used to having a certain attack already selected, so that when I start a new battle, I forget that everything resets. Like, you already saw that happen with Malachi when I ended up using either save first or save second base twice when I didn't need to, because I forgot I switched it, and I thought I was already on an attack. No, I didn't try this. Let me see if this works. I did not see this either. Oh my gosh. Well, that's more collision I'm gonna have to fix. Well, it's less collision and more like like these buildings are made out of cardboard, where it looks like they have depth from the front, but then from the back they're just like completely flat. And that actually irritates me a lot. I wanted to see if you could just do that. Okay, you can. I'm not going to though. Cause I'm pretty sure I would remember if there was secret dialogue if you try going in there before you do the puzzle. And I don't remember such, so... Because a major... A major instance of... Oh no, what on earth is going on over here? What did I do? That's not supposed to look like that. But I did, try putting in, I think, the same priority event tiles here. Because due to the front of the buildings looking like they have depth with the backs being literally flat, you could actually walk into that building and then, like, you could basically just do this and whatnot by walking a certain way into the roof and whatnot. And I was baffled by that. Also, this area where you could, either in the Blue Zone version or this version, you could walk into the banister like that when you're not supposed to. I must have like messed something up when I was trying to get the tiles. I was changing the tiles. I'm gonna have to keep that in mind so I can fix that. I'm not messing with you. You have to be really careful to not get that within the damage range. That'll just turn into those tiny little specters. Because if you do, you will die. Those specters will kill you. Which is also what I meant about me being slightly underleveled. Before I leave. Oh no, not again. Got it that time. The 1709 bunker was very different back in Find Me. Before you go to, you rise up in the library, it just leads to a normal version of, like, basically like the 1805 and 1402 bunkers. That's where the, that one corrupt Elson that tells you the, hint for that puzzle would be, but because the brand items were in secret areas within each zone rather than being in the heart rooms because they didn't exist back then, you would go up most of the library, you would put that cat book back, and one of those chests would have the grand diagonal. You would backtrack all the way down to the residential area, go into the 1709 bunker, and if you have the grand diagonal in your inventory, it would instead send you to a purified version of the bunker instead of the normal impure version. And within it would be the 1709 Elson, but his event name, would be, his event name back then was Oracle Elson, and he would talk about, like, he would be cryptic and talking about, like, the lore of what Find Me was back then. Things like how Abram and Zaphkiel were originally normal men, like, you and I, but they were given godhood. They were made special from the rest by Mother Eve, and Mother Eve was the nothingness. Back then, the sun was actually Vater Aloha and not Hugo. And even though back then, if you were into Find Me back then, you would know that Adam's name was basically, like, redacted back then. You wouldn't know what his name was. He was only known by the Warden, his title of the Warden. However, his name is literally in the game itself. It's just very well hidden, because who's going to think to go grab the grand diagonal, come all the way back here, and then the 1709 bunker will just be different. This is the only instance of that in the entire game. Like, the grand rooms actually do exist in the files of Find Me, if you go look through it in RPG Maker, but only Zone 2's is accessible. After talking to the Elson, exhausting all his dialogue, you can go downstairs. You can there will be a pedestal in the middle of the room, kind of like what you see, like, what you would see at layer 5 of the tower, or like in the blue version of the final hallway to Pure Enoch, the blue dream, and in a secret room in Red Zone 0. Those pedestals were in the game. In the one of the comments for Find Me said that it would be where the Supremes would be placed, and I was confused by that. I don't know if Dismal meant the Grands, because each, I think it's each, or either just Zone 2's had a blue variant of the purified version of the room, kind of like what happens in Zone 0 when you put the Grand Chocolatier in that pedestal. The room turns blue. So I don't see how it could have been the Supremes, especially since you can't get the Supremes until after each zone. I don't think you would be able to get back to the zones after getting the Supremes. So I think he actually meant the Grands. There's dialogue for what happens if you put the grand diagonal in the pedestal. You can't do that in Find Me 3.2. There's no prompt to do so, but there was still unused dialogue for it, where the Oracle Elsons said, "Oh, you restored this room. I shouldn't have expected anything less from the one chosen by God," and whatnot. You can't, once you go into that room and you go into the purified 1709 bunker and Find Me 3.2, you can't get back out. There's no exit to the room. Like what I said with that one corpse Elson scare in the residential district, the apartments, it's like that with the purified 1709 bunker. So you can't get back out. You have to reload your save, which means, like, the Zodiac orbs you get from the pedestal room, you can't even use them because you can't get back out. Also, because my memory is bad, but before continuing, because I forgot, one last thing. back then the world building also had it to where only gods had the right to name themselves, and that's why back then Abram's and Zephiel's names were like redacted, and they were only known by A and Z back then, because they did rise to godhood, and that's why they have names. But something happened to Abram that caused his name to be lost, and any who remember it get driven to madness. And Adam back then, he was considered like existentially wrong because he named himself, and only gods are allowed that right. So because the oracle also says something to the effect of like something's very wrong indeed, as if like Adam's existence was wrong.